Guides are a designer's best friend. They help us lay out our document, figure out where we are going to position things, and for this video training I'm going to talk a little bit about guides in general. So I'm going to be working on section 2, page 17 of the project file. If you have downloaded it, go ahead and go to page 17. And on this page we have a frame with some text, a table, and some images. And within our frame we also have columns. And I talked about columns in our last movie. In a later movie we're going to talk about how we can insert columns into things such as text frames. But for this movie we are focusing on ruler guides. So to create or make a ruler guide, you simply go up to your ruler area, click and drag, and that brings down a guide. Now, one of the things I want to point out as I'm dragging this down, you'll notice that while I'm dragging over my pasteboard, that my guide extends to the edge of my pasteboard, and this is called a document guide. As I enter the page area, we'll see that that guide condenses to the edge of the page. It then becomes a page guide and will extend all the way as I slide all the way down to the edge of the page. Another thing you might notice as we bring it down is that the guide will snap to the nearest object, in this case the images. And if I let go, there's my guide, and it kind of fades to the background there. If I want to select it, I simply hover my mouse over it, and we'll see that my mouse gets a little square, and if I click, that our guide gets a little bit thicker. Now this is one really nice thing about InDesign, is that guides are basically objects. So we can move them, we can edit them, and we can change their color and all sorts of things. So here we've just placed a horizontal guide. Now what if I come over and grab a vertical guide and drag it over, and we can see as I enter the page area that it turns into a page guide. But what if I want, while I'm in the page, for this to actually be a document guide? Well, I can do that by hitting the Control key on my keyboard, and as I hit and press the Control key, we can see that the guide extends beyond the page and goes into my pasteboard. And I hold down the Control key and I drag, and the moment that I let it off my Control key, it's going to turn back into a page guide. So that's another nice feature or element here. Now what if I'm working with this guide, and you'll notice as you drag this guide, or as I'm dragging it, you might see it here on the recording, that the measurement is precise. Like here I have 0.62. If I bring it over here, I've got 2.375. But I may not always want precise measurements. I know that I'm working in an 8.5 by 11 layout. So what if I want precise measurements? Well, if I hold down the Shift key and drag, and you look at that little gray box, you'll see that it snaps to or rounds up to the nearest full number or quarter number. So here I have 2.75 or 3 inches or 1.25 or 2.5. So it just kind of rounds up or rounds down that number for me. So here I can get a precise 3 inches if I want to just unclick there and get more flexibility here, or more precise measurements in my document. There's yet another trick that we can do. You may not always want your guides to be this bluish color. What if you're using guides for specific objects such as images? So in this case we have our images here. I'm going to go ahead and just lock this to the edge of that image. And maybe I want this guide to be somewhat of a different color. So I'm going to come select it, right click on it, come and change or select ruler guides, and here we can change the threshold or we can change the color. And here we have a wide range of colors that we can switch it to. So I'm going to switch this guide to, like, let's say burgundy, and click OK. So we don't see that change yet because I still have that guide selected. But if I come out to my pasteboard and select, we can see now we have this really noticeable burgundy color. And I can also come select this guide, right click, ruler guides, let it fly out, select burgundy, click OK. Now both of those guides are burgundy in color, and I know that those guides are being used for my image placement. And that is how we can work with guides. Now we can also delete guides if we highlight that guide. In this case, now I know it's really highlighted because it changed back to that cyan color, and I'm going to hit delete on my keyboard to get rid of it. Come down and select this one, hit delete to get rid of that as well. And one final trick I'm going to show you: if I hit Control Z and bring back those guides, and I hit the Shift key, so I know that this guide's selected, but I want to select both guides, and I hit Control C on my keyboard. Now because these are objects, I can copy, and let's say move down to the next page. Well, let's move up a page. We'll go to page 16. Now if I want to, I can click anywhere on my page, then I'm going to hit Control V, and InDesign is going to remember where those guides were because they are objects. So that's how we can work within guides. And one other thing I'm going to show you actually before we end this lesson is I can, let's say, move this image out. Now I showed you, or you may have noticed as you were kind of moving guides around, that your guides snap to objects. And the same takes place if we have an object and we want to bring it closer to these guides, it will snap to these guides as well. Now, we may not always want our images or our guides to snap into place. So one of the other things that we can do is right-click on the guide and choose or unselect Snap to Guides. By default, it is selected, and it's a really nice feature to have, and I encourage you to use it, but you may not always need it. So in that case, we would unselect Snap to Guides, and then your guides will no longer snap to objects or vice versa. But as a rule of thumb, we like to keep those in place.